Hi, my name is Paul Arnold and I'm a qualified psychotherapist and also a trained coach. And today's session I want to talk about how to manage the trauma in our life. And this is a huge topic and I can only just scratch the fractional surface of this. And I'm going to talk some theory, I'm going to share some behavioral and cognitive strategies to maybe help a bit. But fundamentally, the big traumas in our life, we have really got to go to therapy, particularly some of EMDR, to be able to go and address it. Because you know what? This is about emotional overwhelm. And one of the big areas that psychotherapy works very powerfully in is to be able to help a person express and to witness the emotionality which they're trying to make sense of. More of that later on. So let's start to get into the topic itself. Trauma takes many different forms, and we talk about little t trauma and big T trauma, and I'll come back on that in a little minute. But, the one that we probably most relate to is the thing that everyone now calls PTSD. And I've read figures that suggest there are 12 million people in the world who suffer from PTSD. And there have been some phenomenally good films about it. Some of those sort of classics like Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver and Hurt Locker and Hunger Games have all dealt with that space of a person who's trying to sort of deal with this massive overwhelm of fear and danger that pervades every inch of their lives. And we know it absolutely massively disrupts their lives. It disrupts their ability to work, their ability to sleep. It affects their health in multiple ways. It destroys relationships. And we know that there's like massive correlation with very high dependency on drugs and alcohol and things like this. Massive mood swings. And obviously the furthest end of that, there are not only suicidal thoughts, but suicidal actions as well that goes on in this space. And, it is a very, very important field that we need to be working on. And I talked about big T and little t. So, Vietnam War, 9/11, the loss of a mother or a father at a very young age, a major accident. Will all be big T traumas. One big event that was almost seismic in what happened to you. And then we talk about little T traumas, and little T traumas are that constant, drop almost every day of just sort of being put down in a relationship, being gaslit. In my case, I've got a stammer and I had to live with, the constant teasing and being laughed at and feeling humiliated in the schoolroom. So it comes in different shapes and forms, and there are lots of different forms of trauma that goes on. But fundamentally what's going on is the neurological pathways are sort of geared towards fear response. We don't have a completely rational attitudes to what things are dangerous and what are not. And basically people feel dreadfully unsafe. They feel absolutely petrified and scared, and they are in survival mode. Those primitive, limbic systems in the brain are being triggered massively. And they're deeply oversensitized. They see danger everywhere. And the smallest things they have nothing to go and do with. And you've all heard, the backfire in the car makes someone who has been in a war-torn situation think a gun, and they suddenly just duck and they just do things like that. And so, and there's a great piece of work done, about polyvagal theory and about the sort of hyper and hypo arousal states. And these people are almost constantly in a hyper, or for some people a hypo arousal state. They are just completely triggered, because if if the polyvagal theory is all about, is it safe? They are feeling unsafe all the time. You know, Bessel van der Kolk wrote a brilliant seminal book called The Body Keeps the Score. Highly recommend it. You know, it really explains a lot of what's going on there. You know, what we know is that there's a massive fragmentedness within the person. Bromberg talks about these dissociated self-state, these bits that we just can't possibly cope with, and we just sort of dissociate. And sometimes we dissociate so much we push it onto another person in this sort of projection. But they live in a place of massive overwhelm. They can't control their emotions. They're reliving the trauma. They have flashbacks all the time. You know, they're triggered by lots of different things. You sort of completely innocent, benign things just trigger them, and they just go into overwhelm and they can't really cope. And they either go into sort of massive self-destructive, so to get themselves out of the pain of the trauma, or they may go into a freeze state or whatever, into those, as I said, those hyper and hypo states. Memory is often very episodic. It's very fragmented and incomplete, and they can't remember everything, you know, and that's a lot of what the work that goes on. So, you know, lots of people have done some work in this. Judith Herman has got her 3 stages, and basically there's this safety and stabilization is the most important. You can't take anyone near their trauma until they feel safe and secure, and very often we talk about creating a safe space they can go back to. You know, they may have a safe word they say, and suddenly we move away from that and we go back to a safe place. They've always got to feel safe because they basically feel unsafe. So that is like probably 90% of the work. Then, and only then, and this could take years, you may go to a place of remembrance and sort of mourning, and then there'll be a final stage of reconnection and integration, making sense of the narrative, pulling the pieces together, working to allow you to then at least almost like put it to bed and allow it to be less driving of what you are. But as I say, affect regulation is everything. So strategy wise, you know, look, the very first thing I do is say, you've got to seek therapy. And maybe the very first stage of that is EMDR. It's been shown to have very powerful results. I would also say that, you know, go and seek some medication, because there's going to be a need for that, probably at an initial place of calming to make yourself feel more in control. And then of course we've got, you know, a lot of breathing exercises, a lot of, you know, mindfulness exercises. All these things are really powerful, you know, to help in some degree. But we've got to remember that these people are in emotional overwhelm, so these may have less of a real impact. You know, and, you know, clearly try to steer clear, work out what the triggers are, try to steer clear of those to keep yourself in a safe place. So, you know, psychotherapy I think is an absolute must here, you know, because it helps to get them out of this trapped space. And there's something about what happens is when they're in the therapy room, we're doing a lot of emotional regulation. We're obviously witnessing them, giving them a safe space to feel okay in. And I think that certainly EMDR can play a big role. They probably still need to do work after that. But, you know, I think we all have some degree of trauma in our life. And for some people, it is totally debilitating. And for those people, they need a lot of work. And for the rest of us, we've got our own bits of trauma, which again, therapy can really help with. Anyway, I hope that helps.